wife like a lamb to the slaughter. He's already ruined her by parading her in the yard with a noose around her neck." Atlas looked up from his plate. "A what?" "A halter," she said. "He's auctioning her off to the highest bidder. There's no telling where that poor girl will end up." "I say." Charlton stared at her, obviously aghast. "Do you mean to tell us that people still sell their wives in this day and age?" She harumphed. "Not decent folk." Outrage seared Atlas's chest. "Surely she has family who will put a stop to this farce?" "I couldn't say." She lifted one shoulder. "Nobody knows Mrs. Warwick's people or where she come from. The mister, he spends most of his time in London, and he just showed up with her one day, and that was that." She wiped her hands on her apron. "Can I get you anything else?" "No, thanks to you, madam." A charming smile touched Charlton's lips. As the publican's wife shuffled back to the kitchen, the Earl turned to Atlas. "Selling one's wife, can you imagine?" He cut a small slice of mutton. "The humbler classes defy understanding, although—" He paused thoughtfully with a forked bite of mutton suspended in the air. "Perhaps I would feel differently if I knew what it was like to be leg-shackled." Atlas dragged a heavy hand down over his mouth and chin. "Such humiliation is not to be borne." Charlton's fair brows inched upward. "My good man." Atlas's chair screeched across the sanded, stone-flagged floor as he came to his feet, his mutton and throbbing foot all but forgotten, especially for a woman without a family's protection. Charlton groaned. "Not again. Do sit down, Atlas," he implored. "I beg of you. For all we know, this has all been prearranged, and she has a lover who will bid for her, and they'll go off happily together." "And if she doesn't?" Atlas fixed him with a cold stare. "You comprehend as well as I the hellish prospect she faces." "Oh, very well." With a dramatic sigh, Charlton rose and tossed his fork aside to follow Atlas out the door. "She could very well have the face and form of a troll, and no harm of that manner will come to her." They stepped outside into the courtyard and weaved their way through the crowd of onlookers. The interminable downpour that had dogged their journey from Bath had left the yard sodden and reeking of mud, damp hay, and horse dung. The rain had eased, giving way to a grey and overcast afternoon, but the moisture in the air remained thick enough to wring water from it. "I'll give you a shilling," called a long-faced man with an eager grin as they passed him. "Is she a good shag? Do we get a chance to sample the goods before we buy her?" When they reached the front of the crowd, the object of the idiot's effrontery came into view, and she was far from the boisterous fishwife Atlas had expected. This woman stood straight-spined, with her head lifted. Dark hair framed perfect cheekbones and refined features set against ivory skin. Defiance glittered in her amber-brown eyes as she stared straight ahead, giving no indication she'd registered any of the jeers. She carried herself like a queen surveying her subjects, rather than a woman facing great degradation. "She's a spirited wench who doesn't know her place," said the man standing next to her, a proprietary air emanating from his stocky form. He possessed a shock of thick grey hair and appeared to be at least 2 decades older than the young woman. His clothing and deportment lent him the appearance of a country squire, but the thick rope clutched in one beefy hand marred that impression. Atlas took some satisfaction in the sight of the noose at the other end of the rope, mired in mud on the ground, rather than wrapped around the woman's neck. "She's always been high in the instep, that one," whispered a gravelly-voiced woman who'd nudged up behind Atlas and Charlton. "Her new master must take a firm hand with her," said the man, presumably her husband, although the bastard clearly didn't have a clue as to the proper treatment of one's wife. "I'll pay 20 pence for the pleasure,"